Hi, everyone. I am in Orlando, Florida for a meeting that I have to go to. So I am not in my location. I'm not even in a hotel room. I'm at someone's house that let me use their internet because the hotel internet, as we did our last Facebook Live, wasn't so great. So I'm grateful that it looks like we're live. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad you're here because today we are going to talk about safety. What makes a relationship, especially a marriage, safe? Now, I'm here with my two coaches, Diana and Leanne, and we're going to have a conversation with you about safety in relationships, especially in marriage. But I just want you to be safe on Facebook. And so before we ever get started with comments, I want you to know this is on my public Facebook page. And so if you're going to make some comments, understand that those can be seen by whoever ends up at my Facebook page. And it's not a private page. It's not a private site. So be wise and be safe about what you put on this page as we talk about safety. I want to expand the definition of safety. But before I do that, I want to ask you, what makes you feel unsafe in relationships? Type it in the chat. What kinds of things make you feel unsafe in relationships? Put some of your thoughts down. It doesn't have to necessarily be in your marriage, but it could be. But for you to be safe, don't say in my marriage. Just say, this is what happens where I feel unsafe. For example, I feel unsafe when someone criticizes and mocks what I say, like as if I'm stupid or I don't know what I'm talking about. And so if I try to make a comment and someone responds to that comment, I remember being in a Bible study once and I was, having a completely different opinion on something that the leader was teaching. And I, of course, raised my little bold hand and said, I'm not sure I see it that way. I see it this way. And she was like, oh no, it can't be that way. And it was just like, it was very dismissive. It was very disrespectful. And so it just made me feel a little anxious and unsafe to share my opinion. So what kinds of things make you feel unsafe in relationships? I'd love to hear from you. Hurtful words, guilt trips, demeaning comments, belittling. Yeah, lies, manipulation. You guys got it. What are you here to learn? You got it. Yeah, being lied to, given the silent treatment for days and days, being yelled at. I feel unsafe when I'm not being listened to. Yeah, not sharing bank statements, temper tantrums, sharing my opinions. Yeah, so you've got what makes us feel unsafe. Someone walking out of a conversation. Yeah, anything else? Because we're talking, how about when someone uses the Bible against you? Like you're a Christian, they know you're a Christian, you're committed. It's not like you're some sort of rebellious person and they're using the Bible to try to correct you. Even that could be unsafe. But let's say that you do love the Lord and yet you don't believe the same thing they do, or you don't believe it the same way they do, like headship and submission stuff, or maybe, the role of women in church, and you start speaking up about some stuff and you get put down as if you're some sort of idiot, like you don't know the Bible, or you're a loser, or even if you have a different opinion on divorce. I've certainly been shut down a number of times because of my stance and my different look and outlook on that. Not sharing financial information. Yeah, not being free to share my opinion or someone talking for me when I try to share what I'm thinking. Yeah. So you guys have got the essence of safety. So in a relationship, and I want to invite Leanne and Diana chime in on this, but in a relationship, depending on how close it is, even when you're with your doctor, let's say you're just with your doctor and you're trying to explain something and he's not listening, or she's putting you down, or they're making you feel like it's a psychological issue instead of a physical issue. You don't feel safe with that caregiver anymore. Or I remember being at the dentist and the dentist was hurting me and I'm ouch, the Novocaine isn't working. And if he had told me, you're being ridiculous, stop it, settle down now, child, I would have felt unsafe with that dentist and I wouldn't have gone back. So we want to cover what to do when you feel unsafe. You've got what unsafe is, but what do you do? And is it important to be safe in relationships? And can you imagine being in a relationship with someone, a close relationship, or even a professional relationship, like with a counselor or with your doctor, or your dentist, or your financial advisor, your tax preparer, and you don't feel like they've got your back, that you don't feel heard, that you don't feel listened to, that you don't feel safe? What does that do for the relationship? So safety is broad, emotional safety, physical safety. When I drive in a cab, if I start to feel unsafe, or an Uber, I'm not going to take that person again, right? Physical safety, emotional safety, spiritual safety, financial safety, sexual safety. There's lots of layers of safety here, right? So what are some of the ingredients, Leanne and Diana, that you would say create safety in a relationship?
Wow. I'll tag, or I'll jump in first, and then Diana, tagging you, because acceptance of who I am as a human being helps me to feel safe. As I was preparing for this live, I wrote down my own little acronym for safe. I want to feel secure to be myself.
Right.
And sometimes when I don't feel safe, I want to put a mask on and pretend that I'm not myself because I'm trying to people please.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a big one for me. I also want to be free. I also want to be free to have my own thoughts, my feelings, and express who God created me to be, as opposed to letting the labels that other people try to put on me be what comes first. I want to present honestly who I am. And I want to feel secure. I want to feel secure that I belong in my relationship, in my environment. I talk a lot about environmental safety. Some people don't feel safe in their own homes. And I think we have an opportunity to talk about that too. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague over here, Diana, and anxious to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, I actually have a huge list of what safety is, but what comes to mind right now, I think, is communication. And when you think about, because we have to have the ability to communicate all that you said, Leanne, who we are, and to be heard. And so when I think of communication in a relationship that is safe, it's a relationship in where I can really feel free to express from the deeper senses of who I am, really what matters to me. And it might not matter to the other person, but the fact that it matters to me should at least matter to them. Mm-hmm. And that again, I'm not minimized. I'm not talked out of what I think or I know. I think many of us who have been with unsafe people talk us out of what we think or know, or try to talk over us. But looking at communication styles, do I have the ability in this relationship to talk freely, or to express my concerns and move through them? And so just noticing, can this person hear me? Can they tolerate my opinion, or really share in my opinion without bullying me or disrespecting me? And we all know sometimes in the climate today, it's really hard to express our opinions in a safe way, even among other believers. And so for me, that's a big deal. And learning healthy ways to communicate and to feel safe. Because I think if you don't, like you said, Leanne, you shrink back, and then you want to just please somebody. So you're really not showing up who you are in that relationship.
I really appreciate that, Diana. And I think, we can really see it in our world. I mean, even in Facebook, to say something that you believe strongly, and be able to show up, and these are my convictions, or these are my thoughts, or this is my opinion on something. I mean, it doesn't mean we're right. It doesn't mean we always have the bottom line on every thought there is in this world, but to be able to have a conversation about that, for someone to say, wow, I never thought of that before, but here's my take on it, and here's how I look at it, and be able to have that conversation. So safety doesn't necessarily mean agreement. And this is sometimes when a woman is in a destructive marriage and she starts to get stronger, her husband will start using this word, I feel unsafe around you, because what he's really saying is, the rules are changing and you're starting to speak up for yourself, and you're not taking my abuse anymore. And I feel unsafe that our marriage is going to keep going the way it was. And I don't know what you're doing here. And that makes me feel unsafe. We're not talking about that kind of safety. We're talking about when you can't be you. And it doesn't mean that everything about you someone likes or approves of. I have plenty of friends who I would disagree about certain things pretty strongly, but we feel safe in each other's presence, that we're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We're not out to hurt each other. We're not out to disrespect each other. We're here to understand. and I don't understand your point of view, or I don't understand how you think this way. Help me to understand. And I care about you, so I care about how you think, even if at the end of the day, I don't think the same way. So we don't always have to have agreement to have safety, but we do need to have common courtesy and compassion and respect.
Well, it's so true. And we have, it's an amazing privilege that we can give each other an opportunity to allow each other to mature and to grow up and to share with support instead of being demeaned or mocked. And I think that many of the women that we speak with every day, that is the behaviors that are going on inside their household, is that they're not being appreciated for their own maturity and growth. And, in the Lord, we just know that we're growing every day. And we have a privilege to continue to learn from him and to learn from each other. And God created us for a relationship, and he wants us to feel safer in our relationships every day. I really believe that. And that's part of our own personal work to do. And we don't need to be so afraid, or my desire would be that we would not be afraid to share who we really are. And some of us have hidden who we really are because of fear of being mocked, blamed, demeaned, diminished,
or rejected.
And rejected. And that's my other big word, is rejected and abandoned for being who we are. And boy, if that would be my prayer for even this live, is that women would be safer, right? At the end of our time together today, to start to share with someone in their world, to join a community, to get with a group where they can feel safer if they're not feeling safe at home.
Yeah, one thing that it struck me when you were talking, Leanne, is even safety within. Like, for us to be ourselves, we also have to accept ourselves. Like, if I'm uncomfortable with something that my doctor does, or if I'm uncomfortable with someone driving recklessly, can I be okay with me being uncomfortable? Or am I putting myself down? Oh, you're just being ridiculous, or you're just being a baby. Why can't you handle this? Well, this scares me. Can I accept that this is where I am right now, even if I don't like it? This is where I am right now. And can I communicate that to someone else? Can I first care about me and where I am without shaming and degrading me, so that I'm not even safe to know my own feelings? Because if I know my feelings, that I'm angry, or I'm hurt, or I'm upset, or I'm embarrassed, or I'm afraid, and I shouldn't feel those feelings, and I'm a bad girl for feeling those feelings, or I'm not a Christian for feeling those feelings, well, then I can't even share them with anybody else, because I'm not safe within my own. We're talking about internal safety as well as external safety.
So big. So true.
The ability to be self-reflective, to be responsible for ourselves. And so that's a relationship green flag, self-responsibility and being able to be self-reflective. But can I do that for myself as I'm looking for that in relationship with others as well? I love that, because so many of us have learned that it's not safe to do those things. And so maybe the growth is in really learning how to care and nurture for what I'm experiencing, and saying, hey, this is not okay with me.
Yeah, because sometimes that voice inside of our head, our own inner critics, can really keep us stuck and feeling unsafe. And learning that self-compassion is a big, beautiful space to be, so we can be safe with ourselves and safe to be alone. So often when we are feeling unsafe, we can go to all kinds of other things in order to try and feel safer. We can numb, we can do all these kinds of things that perhaps are not healthy for us. Right. And we're here to bring healthy to the forefront.
And not only we're here to bring healthy, God. I mean, part of the whole definition of holiness, which is, everybody agrees, if you're a Christian, that that's what God's will is, but holiness means wholeness, and wholeness means healthiness. And so as we strive to be healthy women and create healthy relationships, and we recognize and define what's unhealthy, I think that sometimes we get criticized by church leaders, because I was just doing a seminar last week at AACC, the American Association of Christian Counselors, and we talked about marriage in all of this and how to rebuild broken trust. And, I said, if all you see marriage as is a contract, a responsibility, a covenant, and you don't see it as a relationship, then you're not really noticing when safety is missing, because you can fulfill your role as a wife and still feel unsafe, just like you can fulfill your role as a slave and still feel unsafe with your slave owner. But you can't have a relationship with someone, especially an intimate one, but you can't even have a casual relationship where you feel unsafe with someone. And so it's so important that we talk about this in marriage as well as other relationships, because if your relationships are unsafe, then they're destructive. They're destructive to you emotionally. They can be destructive to you physically, financially, spiritually. And that's not healthy. That's not leading to wholeness or godliness. And I love that verse in Proverbs in marriage where it talks about marriage as a safe place. It says, he trusts her to do him good, not harm, all the days of his life. This is the Proverbs 31 woman. He trusts her. She's an independent woman. She's got her own source of money. She's prominent in the marketplace, and she's her own person. She's not just doing a role. She's a person. And he values her and trusts her. And that to me is a picture of a healthy marriage. And when we just define marriages as, well, your role and responsibility is to make sure you're available sexually to him, and you don't feel safe because you're not even allowed to talk, let alone get naked and be unafraid. You can't get naked emotionally and be unafraid. And so it's just so unhealthy the way we teach things about relationship these days in the church.
And along with that, Leslie, I feel like a lot of times when we're in relationships like that, we're not even identifying that we're feeling unsafe. Mm-hmm. We're really accommodating the other person so much, and we're not thinking on a deeper level, am I really expressing who I am? I think it's maybe something that we learn as we grow, that if I want to be okay in this world, I have to acquiesce to everyone else on the outside of me. And so I would encourage, as our audience is listening, to kind of try to find some of the subtle ways, or think of some of the subtle ways that I'm not paying attention, that I'm accommodating others and not being okay with what is true for me. And, I have an example of that. I mean, I think, I was at a group gathering, and, the rule was to wear your mask, and no one was wearing their mask. I brought my mask. I had it in my hand, and I wanted to wear my mask. I knew that it was kind of a close quarters, but there is something there inside of me saying, well, no one else is doing it. But listening to yourself, what am I comfortable with? What am I not comfortable with? And sometimes it takes listening, because maybe you've been doing this so long. Sometimes it takes the support of a community for you to even notice what you've been doing for so long.
Yeah, and if you need more help with this, we have a webinar coming up about rebuilding broken trust, because you can't have safety without trust, right? You have to begin to build safety back into a relationship, whether it's a relationship with a parent who's abused you, or a spouse that's lied to you or cheated on you or mismanaged money, or wherever communication has broken down. You have to learn, is this possible? It was so interesting last week when I spoke to the pastors and counselors at the American Association of Christian Counselors Convention. I did an illustration. I just worked them through an exercise, took about 5 minutes. And I said, when in your life was trust broken by a friend who told your secret, or by a teacher who promised you a certain grade and you didn't get it, or a coach who said you'd make the team and you didn't, whatever happened where you believed someone or you trusted someone to do you good, not harm, and that didn't happen. And when trust broke down, how did you feel? I asked them. And then the next thing I said is, what happened to the relationship? I wanted them to see that once you don't feel safe, once trust has been broken, you don't feel safe anymore, psychologically safe, emotionally safe, physically safe, spiritually safe. Once that's been broken, what happens to it deteriorates. And then what I asked them to do is, so what rebuilt that relationship? Or what happened to that relationship? So if you rebuilt safety, what happened? And if you didn't do anything about that, what happened to the relationship? We had 300 people in the room, all pastors and counselors and people who were interested in this topic. And 95% of them raised their hand when I said, was the relationship ever rebuilt? And they said no. 95%. We don't do a good job with this. And so if counselors and pastors have gone through this and the relationship wasn't rebuilt, they have no clue as to how to rebuild a relationship when you come before them with a relationship that's broken, especially in marriage. It goes back to, well, you're married, so you have to give them sex twice a week and you got to do your responsibilities and your roles. And it goes back to this duty, obligation relationship versus safe, trusting, intimate relationship, which is the relationship that God desired marriage to be and become. So I just want you, if you have trouble with trust and rebuilding broken trust, especially in marriage, I'm going to be talking about it in this workshop, but in any relationship, what are the ingredients that show you that trust and safety are being rebuilt? Then you want to attend our webinar next Wednesday. We have 2 time slots. I'll be live. I'll be teaching it live. It's at lesliebernick.com, like in the front, join webinar, and you have to sign up to attend. And I would highly encourage you to be live because this is a private site now. It won't be on my public Facebook page. You can be more vulnerable and honest in your questions and in your chat together. And you will get about an hour of just straight information about this trust thing with a handout, and then we'll be available to answer your questions. And so if this is a topic about safety in relationships and broken trust and rebuilding that safety trust, you want to attend this webinar where you're going to get a lot of tools on what steps are necessary and how long does it take? And how do you know if it's really happening or if they're just kind of going through the motions? I'm going to give you those red flags to indicate that. So if that's something that would appeal to you or you know someone who needs to be at this webinar, it's next Wednesday at noon Eastern time for an hour of webinar and probably an hour and a half of Q&A. And then at 7:30 Eastern time for the same thing. So we're going to go back to answering your questions now about this topic. Remember, this is my public Facebook page. So we want to make sure that you're asking questions that will be safe for you to ask if someone should happen to read this later. Your husband, your mother-in-law. We've had a number of times in the past where women have written things like, my husband's watching porn and I don't know what to do. And the mother-in-law, his mother saw it and didn't go well for her. So we want to make sure that you are safe as you express yourself in a public way, in a public forum. But it could always be, I have a friend whose husband, and you can do that. And so therefore you can be a little safer that way. All right. So do we have any questions, Leah?
We do. And I just want to share, I'm looking at the feed and this is balm for my soul is what the women are saying. And so, this is a much needed topic. And so I'm going to grab our questions here. And here's the first one that came in. Whoops. All right. Oh, isn't that funny? Okay, no, funny, not funny. Something popped in front of my screen. Here we go. I am in my 40s, and yet my in-laws treat me and my husband like we are newly 20-year-olds. They don't ever make us feel like we can do the right thing. Is that the same thing as being unsafe in a relationship?
Who wants to take that? Go ahead. You look like you're about ready to say something.
Oh, I don't know if it might. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's unsafe in a relationship. But what comes to my mind is certainly a conversation needs to be had, and you will find out whether or not you're safe in that relationship after you have the conversation with mutual respect and the right tone, stating what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you would like in this relationship, and then seeing how it's received. How it's received and whether or not you're listened to may tell you whether or not this person is able to be in a reciprocal, communicative, safe relationship. And then you'll know where to go from there.
I think that's so good. I've been visiting my dad over the last, with my mom dying last month, and then I just went to see him this weekend. He's 92 years old, but for all of my life, not when I was a little kid, but for all of my adult life, he's always had something to say about my weight. He always comments about what I eat. And so it's just, his family does it. Everybody does it. So finally, when I was about not 70, I'm not 70 even yet, but about 60, I said to him, Dad, I'm 60 years old. Don't you think I know whether I can eat this cookie or not? Right? And he looked at me like, oh my gosh, that's terrible that I've been saying that all these years. And he repented, and he's never said another word to me about what I eat. So sometimes your parents are in some bad habits of making comments and doing things that they're not even aware of. So I agree with Diana. It's time for you to put your toe in the water of hot water and say, hey, we're 40 years old now, we're grown-ups, and it makes us feel like you don't have confidence in us when you keep evaluating and criticizing our choices. We don't like that. Could you please let us be free to live our own life? And if you are concerned about something serious, have a conversation with us. But these little remarks are really getting under our skin. And see if it's one of those kind of things where it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't even been conscious that I've been doing that.
Right. Well, and on the theme of safety in a relationship, the really cool thing is when we do that, it allows us to see if the people that we're having this conversation with are safe for us to have real conversation with about real topics in real life, real time. And that's, and if they're willing, like your dad did, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that I was doing that. Right. As opposed to dismissing you or saying it shouldn't matter to you or you're too sensitive, because I know many of us here in this space have been told that instead of being free to have that conversation in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. There's somebody in the feed who's saying something that I just want to address for just a minute. It has nothing to do with safety, but it has something to do with mindset. And so the question is, if my husband isn't willing to give me the money, do you guys do scholarships? First of all, the webinar is absolutely free. But the deeper issue is, if you are dependent on your husband to give you the money to do things that you need to do for you, that's a safety issue. That's a safety issue. And I would say that you need to take some responsibility for if you need to do something. So if your husband wasn't willing to give you money to go to the doctor, what would you do? Would you just let that happen? Or would you either get the money yourself or ask someone for the money? So I think this is where we as women have kind of allowed ourselves to be demeaned as children in a relationship. You're an adult partner in this relationship. I'm not saying, demand the money, but I think to say, hey, this is important to me and I need this. Now the webinar is free, so I'm not talking about this, but for something else that you need. And if he decides for you what you need, then that relationship isn't safe. But if he did do that, that says something about the relationship for sure. But would you allow yourself to forsake medical treatment because he wouldn't pay for it? Or would you go and get a part-time job? Or would you babysit your friend's children for a couple of days so that you could earn some money, or clean a house, or sell something on eBay, or do something for yourself to get yourself what you need? That's good self-care. And that's part of being a grown-up and taking responsibility for what you need and not waiting for someone to give you it, especially if you're married to someone who's not benevolent that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's important too, right, for us to be able to identify what we do need. And so I encourage you to take a big breath and assess do a little self-assessment. What do I really need in order to take care of myself?
Yeah.
Well, and along with that, we're talking about, as Leslie said so well, a part of a safe relationship is equality and partnership. And if there are aspects of that relationship where there's no equality, that's an indication that something needs to change, because those kinds of decisions need to be made mutually. And so if you've accepted that in your relationship, that I'm less than, or I don't get a say in so many of these ways, one of them being the finances, that's an indicator. I'm not in a safe relationship. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, we have another question.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is this: I have been self-medicating with food, stuffing down uncomfortable feelings. I want to be whole. I don't want to drink or anything like that, but I have an unhealthy relationship with food. How can I start to be healthier and feel safer? So many of us go to other substances to numb or to stuff or to feel better. It could be chocolate, it could be alcohol, it could be food, shopping. You know what I even realized about myself is I can go to resources and books, right? I can do all of that. And, God wants us to remember that he created us for relationship. And so one thing that we can do is to build community with other people and to join in a community and reach out to the relationships that God has given you instead of substances or food, things, whatever. And I feel like that's something that I really find. I mean, if you saw behind me right now, I have a gazillion books back here because I love resources. And one thing that God is really, really impressing upon my heart is my need for real connection with people with skin on right here. So instead of turning to food or a glass of wine or a shopping expedition or an Amazon huge delivery cart, it is going to be to connect with other women, healthy women who I want to spend some time with and get to know, who are walking this out too and trying to figure out what safer and whole and healthy means.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what Leslie would say with this, but I'll just say that I think maybe sometime to, I get a lot of those kind of distractions. I get cravings for all kinds of things. And I'm always thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on that's a little bit deeper? And I know that when I'm craving certain types of foods or even a glass of wine, that sometimes it's emotional. And I just need some time to sit and to think about what's really going on. Sometimes we're moving so fast, something might have happened, I don't know, 5 interactions before this, and I'm carrying the emotion of it still, and I haven't really diagnosed what's going on. So give yourself some time to sit and get quiet and think about what's coming up.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Diana. And I put in the chat, I think there's a real difference between self-comfort and self-care.
Yeah.
And food is more of a self-comfort. And I'm not saying that's always bad. Sometimes it's good to, wrap yourself in a big old blanket and do some rocking and self-comfort yourself, or, but understand that when your self-comfort is actually sabotaging your self-care, then that's a problem. And so overeating, eating too much junk food, over drinking, self-medicating is comforting in the moment, but then it causes more problems later on with your relationships, with your health, with your weight, with your self-image, all those kind of things. And so when your self-comfort is becoming destructive to your well-being overall, your self-care, then that's time to really kind of take a deep breath and say, wow, what am I covering up? Like Diana said, what am I avoiding? And what am I not doing that might be? So for me, sometimes when I'm really, really tired, caffeine and sugar keep me, going. But really what I need to do is just go to bed. I need to take a rest. So self-care would be, hey, I can't do anymore. I need to go lay down. I need to go to bed. But self-comfort is, oh, I'm so tired. I need this, boost of Diet Coke and a candy bar or whatever to keep me going. And that's not helpful, healthy self-care.
So good. So good. All right. You ready for another question? Okay. For the first decades of my marriage, I was in a destructive marriage. And then my husband was in active psychosis with paranoid schizophrenia. In the last year, we have moved. My husband is doing better. He's medicated. Now I feel like the boogeyman. I do everything, and I have horrible feelings, and I don't like my marriage. So is this a safe marriage, or am I just hurting from past hurt?
You don't know yet, or I don't know yet. But I think, we can give you some things. Sometimes when someone scares us with paranoid delusions and scary kind of stuff, especially when someone's threatening or has been running around the house with a knife or thinking that there's, Martians coming to attack. I mean, they can be very frightening, and it can be hard to live in when is this going to happen again kind of feeling. And so maybe you do feel a bit unsafe. Maybe you feel a lot unsafe, depending on the degree of his paranoia and all those kind of things. But I'm not sure what you meant by boogeyman. Maybe you feel like the bad guy, but I'm not sure why you're doing everything. So if he's getting healthier, at least through medication, more stable, why isn't he taking some responsibility for life, for rebuilding broken trust? Even if he broke trust in a fit of paranoia, he still has to rebuild that broken trust by consistently taking his medication, by going to the psychiatrist, by getting the help he needs to stay stable, so that you can count on him to do his work in the best way he can to stay psychiatrically stable so that you're not going to go through that again. So I don't know enough of the details to say, but I think there's some conversations. But it sounds like you've kind of taken this whole burden of maintaining this relationship and over functioning, and that's exhausting you.
Yeah. Great. I don't have anything to add. What about you, Diana?
No, I think Leslie said it well. There's not enough information to really know. But balancing out, what's being done in terms of who's functioning in the relationship. I mean, we pull back when someone is not doing well, and so maybe it's time to try to figure out what's possible for him in terms of sharing the load. Increasing, his capacity, his responsibilities. But first we have to change our expectations, because maybe she had to do a lot for a long time when he was not well. And so now it's like, okay. And sometimes my husband I was recovering 3 months. I was not allowed to walk on my foot. And at one point he said to me, "You can do it now." Because you get into that where like, you just want someone to kind of wait on you. And he was wise enough to say to me, "It's your turn, Diana. You need to start getting strong again." So that might be a little bit of that happening here too.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. And I just,
again, in the feed, there's a question, maybe you're seeing it, Leanne. It doesn't rebuilding trust require both parties to participate? What do you think about that?
Oh man, rebuilding trust cannot be done alone. And we are created for a relationship, and trust is so fundamental for a healthy relationship that I can be really strong here and say, without trust, it's really hard, if not impossible, to have a healthy relationship. And I do believe that both parties have the opportunity and the privilege to meet each other at the table with a growth mindset. And if they don't, it's darn near impossible, dare I say.
Yeah, and I think the one who broke trust, especially if it's a serious breach or a repeated breach like infidelity or addictions or deceit, those kind of things, has to do their own personal work, just like the paranoid schizophrenic has to go do his own personal work and go to the doctor and get the medication, all those kind of stuff. She can't do that part for him. He has to do that. And if he does that, then maybe she might have to do her part at learning to trust him again, right? But if someone never does their part of what they did to break the trust, if they don't get help about their addictions, if they're not understanding why they lie and what that's all about, or all of those kind of things that have broken trust in that relationship, if they're not willing to do that piece first, then I don't think trust can be rebuilt, because you can do your part of forgiving and trying to understand, but if they're not willing to do their part to understand why they did those things to begin with, why they were demeaning, why they were, critical all the time, especially if it's a pattern and you've told them before you don't like it and please stop, and they keep doing it, I don't know how you can rebuild trust, even if you're willing, if they're not doing their own personal work. There's a relational work to do to rebuild broken trust, and then there's the personal work of the person who repeatedly broke the trust that they have to do. And that's why I talk about marriage counseling not being so effective, because you come in and you're trying to rebuild this broken trust after an affair, you're trying to rebuild this broken trust after porn, or you're trying to rebuild this broken trust after tons of years of covert abuse, and yet he's never done any of the work to deal with why he did that in the first place. So how do you rebuild trust on a foundation that's still full of sinkholes?
Right. Gotta fill the bucket, like we talked about last live. If you haven't seen that last live, we got into that about you've got to repair your own bucket. And that's our own work to do. And that's how we can get safer in a relationship, is to do that.
I think a big part of that, though, is really I think it's hard. This is tough. You want to rebuild trust. You really want this decent relationship, and you have someone who, you use the term willing. Willingness is such a good question to ask. Is my partner willing, or my friend willing? And if they're not, well, just noticing the ways in which they're telling me they're not. They might say they are, but their behavior says something different. And so then on my part, I have to be willing to accept that truth. And sometimes it's so painful, we push it away, we keep trying, but they're telling us no. And so So can I accept the reality that this person doesn't want what I want?
Yeah. You know, we're talking about weight here. And so this is a really good illustration. If we could be in a room together and I said to you, how many of you want to lose weight? Or how many of you want to be healthy in your body? I would suspect 98% of you would raise your hand. You know, so if you say to your husband or you want to get back together, you want to rebuild broken trust. Yeah. How many of you are really willing to do the work, to give up your coffee, to give up your wine, to give up the things that you use for self-comfort, to get exercising, to do that consistently? How many of you are really willing to do that? And let's see how you do over time. Because if you do that over time, you will lose the weight. But it's hard. It's hard work. And I think this is where we're, again, not honest with people. We sort of say, oh, yes, I'm willing. Like I said to my friend when I said, I'm willing to run the half marathon with you, in January, but I couldn't actually do it until I trained my body to be able to run that far. And so it takes work to rebuild broken trust, and it takes work to do our own work to understand why we continue to break trust.
Yeah. And, behavior always follows our beliefs. And so we can believe the behavior, we can watch, just like you said, Diana, and sometimes it's really hard to accept when someone's behavior is not changing, when you cry, ouch, this hurts. And somebody doesn't answer your ouch with love and tenderness. That can be incredibly challenging. And we see that, we hold that space for you. And
I remember a woman whose husband committed adultery once in my counseling practice, and you might have experienced this too, Diana. And he wanted to reconcile the relationship. And, he used this analogy, and I thought it was really powerful. He said, and this is where we do such a bad job at counseling, because he said, I never want to see the hurt on my wife's face again when she found out what I did. It was so painful to me to see how much I hurt her. And so in counseling, oftentimes, don't express your feelings. That upsets him. Well, of course that upsets him. It should upset him, because when we really hurt someone, they should feel that impact, or we should feel that impact, because then our shame and our healthy shame and our conscience should come into it. And so he said, every time I think about, having an affair, I think about another woman, I think of this wonderful bowl of soup, and oh my gosh, it feels like, oh, this would taste so good. I'd love to do this. And then I picture this big old hairy fly sitting on the top of that soup, and I'm like, ugh, I don't want that. And it was his way of kind of catching his own fantasy life, his own, just like if you said, oh, I want that chocolate cake, and I don't want to eat chocolate cake anymore. If you start to picture something gross on it, it all of a sudden changes your appetite. And he said that was one way that he was saying this publicly to her. I don't want to fall back into this. I want to do my own work. I don't want to think it's always greener on the other side. And I don't want to hurt you. And recognizing he hurt her and acknowledging that and accepting that he caused her a lot of pain was part of his recovery from doing what he did.
I love that. He had a desire to be different.
Mm-hmm.
He really did the work.
He didn't mean he wouldn't be tempted again, but he did some work around that temptation to picture the consequences of an ugly fly. You don't want that soup anymore. That ugly fly in the soup. It doesn't matter how good that soup looked. If the fly falls in it, you're not going to eat it.
And that's what rebuilding trust looks like. True sorrowful repentance, really understanding, trying to understand what I've done, but really doing the work. And, we know as coaches and counselors that it's a journey to repairing trust. It's not a one-time thing. So it might look like I'm going to demonstrate trust for a period of time, and that's how it's rebuilt.
Yeah, new patterns, making new history, new behaviors over time. So good. The questions are like flying in, ladies. So are we ready to move on to another one?
Please show up at the webinar, and we will answer them all at the webinar. But go ahead, Leanne.
Yeah, no, LeslieVernick.com/, if you're just listening and not watching, /join webinar. Go sign up, because Leslie, they can't get into the webinar unless they sign up, right? It's not going to be here live on Facebook. So we just want to remind you, you got to sign up. All right. Here's the next question. My husband controls all of our money, so I can't ever feel like I can spend money on me for courses or coaching or anything to help myself grow. How can I talk to him about wanting to also be able to spend money to help myself grow or heal? And I know we talked a little bit about that already, knowing what you need and being able to express what you need. And, finding other resources, if he's not willing to share, that's a conversation to be had.
And if he's not willing to share, I think asking some respectfully confrontive questions like, hey, I thought this was a partnership, that we were here together. Why do you get to decide for me what I can do? You wouldn't want me to decide for you that you couldn't go to your sports team or whatever he liked. You couldn't go to a hunting vacation, or you couldn't buy, we've got the money and you chose to buy that motorcycle last year. You wouldn't want me to decide for you that you can't do that. Why is it that you get to decide for me that I don't get to do things that I want to do if it costs money?
Those curious questions. They're, having that conversation and just really vulnerable and asking them to please help me to understand this because I don't get it. That's okay. Yeah, I love that.
Why are your needs more important than my needs? Why are your goals more important than my goals? I thought we were here in a partnership. It doesn't feel like a partnership to me. And again, Diana said it really well. His response to that might tell you a whole lot about where his mindset is, that you're really not a person that I should care about. You're just here to fulfill my needs, and you're part of the equation. My needs are baseball, my needs are this, my needs are this, and you're part of that because you give me sex when I want it, and you make my food, and you do my laundry, and you function like a cell phone. My cell phone meets my needs. I don't really love my cell phone in a personal way. I love what it does for me. That's it. And I'm thinking of replacing it because it's starting to give me trouble.
Right. And we are to be cherished and appreciated, not to be objectified.
Yeah.
I don't even like the thought of having to ask permission. I mean, like, if just like I'm an adult, you want to be a self-agent in a relationship, and you want someone to partner with you for your growth and just all in life. I mean, so yeah, that's the perspective is, I want to work myself out of the thought that I need to ask my husband for permission for what I need. So that's the goal of, where I want to be in this conversation is I don't want to ask you for permission. What's going on here?
Yeah. I think that's so true. My blood curdles when I hear women saying to me, oh, I have to ask my husband if I can do that. I mean, as an adult to an adult, you certainly want to check in. Is this a good thing? Can you take over for the kids? Or can can we afford this? I mean, those are information questions. They're not permission questions. And I think when you ask permission of another adult, if you can do something, that puts you in a less than or inferior position of that person. And I don't think that's a healthy relationship, especially in friendship or partnership of marriage.
Well, yeah, and it's not safe. Going back to our topic of tonight, that is not a safe relationship if that is the barometer in which you walk out. So here's another big question. If my husband isn't comfortable with me sharing my struggles with anyone but my therapist, and he is asking me not to share, and if I do, there will be consequences. Yelling, belittling me with my people, and disconnection. What do you guys recommend I do?
I recommend another conversation, exploring a little bit with him about what's going on with that. Help me to understand what you feel when I share, what's going on for you, and what would be healthy sharing from your perspective, and who would be okay for me to share, because it's really okay for me to have some people in my life that I can go to that are wise others that can help me with clarity and strength. And so he might have the perception that everybody knows. And so he might have some valid concerns there. Do not like what happens in terms of punishment. And so that is not okay. Those are all unsafe behaviors, obviously.
And I think too, I think sometimes we can have a valid conversation with our spouse and saying, maybe they have personal medical concerns. It might not even be safety issues. Maybe they have cancer and they don't want anybody to know, but you need support because your husband has cancer. Or maybe they have, they lost their job and they're embarrassed and they don't want anybody to know. And so I think you can understand that and show empathy and say, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. So if you say, I need a friend to talk, it's not just a therapist. I'm talking about me. I need prayer. We're going through some things at home, or I need prayer. I'm struggling to love my husband well, and I don't know how to do that. Or I'm struggling to be honest with him. I need help. Help me to say it the right way. I mean, those are friends that you can talk to. It's not a therapist necessarily that you need for those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And so having that conversation where I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. And are you saying I'm not allowed to talk about me to my friends? I'm only allowed to talk about me to my therapist? That's not appropriate. I have friends. You have friends. If you choose not to talk about you to your friends, that's up to you. But I feel like I need to talk about me at times as my friends talk about them. And we talk about each other and pray for each other and encourage one another and support one another. And I don't want that to threaten you if I talk about me.
Right. That's so good. And that's where we can keep it. Sometimes it's, this is what I'm struggling with. Leslie, you do such a beautiful job of reminding us to identify what it is our problem is, what it is our struggle is, and to take that personal responsibility. And I know that I'm so grateful for the women in my life that are safe women that I can talk about some of my own challenges with, because they're going to help me grow. They're going to help me to be safer with myself as well as in my relationships. And my goodness, that's a desire for many of us here in this space.
Yeah. And even in big issues, I'm struggling to forgive my husband. I need prayer. Oh, what did he do? I'm not free to share that, but I just am free to share what I'm struggling with. And I think those are good boundaries for you to have and for you to share with your husband. And then to say, you're not allowed to tell me what I can share with my friends about me. If you're uncomfortable with me sharing about you, I respect that. But you're not allowed to tell me what I can share about me.
Right. Because that's power and control over, and that's isolating. Right. And those are two very damaging and destructive behaviors. Yeah, that can make us very unsafe.
And we have a Facebook Live about that, I believe Wednesday, about isolation.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. When you are becoming empowered to take care of yourself and leave an unsafe marriage, how do you share with your children? One is a child under age 8 and one in their early 20s. How do I share with them in a way that clarifies our position and situation, but yet protects them and their relationship with their dad?
Does that question, does she say what type of safety?
It just says unsafe.
Physical safety? Yeah, so I guess I would want to know a little bit more about that, before I could answer how to say that to the children. Leslie, do you want to take that?
I would say if they have been a witness to anything unsafe, so if they have been a witness to verbal abuse, if they have been a witness to physical abuse, if they have been a witness to finding out that your husband's having an affair, if they have seen any of that, whether it's the younger one or the older one or both, then I think you can say it. You've seen what's gone on here, and I don't feel safe, and I'm not. Nothing's changed. I've talked to him and he doesn't want to change that. And so I'm not willing to continue to live like this. And so I'm going to separate. If they haven't seen anything, and this is a whole other topic that we can talk about it sometimes, because as women, we're so wanting to protect our kids from any kind of family drama. And in some ways that's a good thing, because children go through a lot of stress when they experience family drama. So we want to protect them. But then sometimes when all of a sudden we come out with, I'm leaving your dad, it's like, what? Mom, you're not a good Christian. And what's wrong with you? And you're breaking up our family. And so it's kind of created a shock wave for them. So I think there's this balance of saying and being honest with your kids, even when you're unhappy, not necessarily saying the dirt on their dad. I know you love your dad. He's been a good dad. If your kids haven't seen any of this, obviously he's been a pretty decent dad. He's been a good dad, but he and I are not doing well. We haven't done well for a long time. And I'm not sure I can continue, or I've decided I can't continue to live like this anymore. What do you mean, Mom? Well, this is a marriage thing. It's between Dad and I. So I don't feel like I want to share that. He has been a good father to you, but he has not been the kind of husband that makes me feel safe. I'm not getting into any more details. So you can have boundaries that way. But if you had episodes before that, even if they hadn't seen it, but let's say you were crying in the kitchen and they go, what's wrong, Mom? Oh, nothing. I just had something in my eyes, cutting onions. Instead of saying, Daddy and I just had a fight and I feel really bad. Oh, what was it about? Well, it's not your business, but I feel really upset. And I'm just going to cry for a minute and I'll get through it. So as you're honest with your kids, this wouldn't become a big shock to them, even if they don't know the details. So we don't know enough details to give you the words to say, but if they've seen it, you can say you've seen what you've seen. There's more that you haven't seen, and I don't need to go into it, but I'm not staying here anymore. If they haven't seen any of it, then to say, I am so sorry that I thought my job as being a good mom was to protect you from seeing anything. But lots of stuff has been going on for years, and I just can't take it anymore.
Leslie, I just love that you gave real practical things that we can say back, because sometimes under stress and when we're not feeling safe, we're blocked from thinking it through. So thank you. And this is recorded for those of you who are asking, and you can share this with your friends that would benefit from it. So good. Because sometimes we need the vocabulary. So we don't know what to say, and we don't want to dishonor. We don't want to dishonor. All right. So here's another big one. How do you keep from dumping your stress? As in whatever toxicity is slung your way. We don't want to dump them on our friends, she says, who really want to help. I feel I spring in the same, I think she meant spin. I feel I spring in the same circle over and over. I don't want to be negative, but then I feel like a pressure cooker.
I think this is what one of my our team, our ministry is to help women start to take ownership for their well-being. And so it's not your friends can't fix this for you, and you can't fix him for you. All you can do is to say, if I feel like a pressure cooker, what do I need to do to take care of me? It's really about you right now. And so that because what happens to women in destructive marriages is this. You either shut down and become flatlined and depressed. You get physically ill, and now you can't leave because you can't work. Or you get so full of that pressure that you start exploding and spewing your own wrath. And your kids start to see you as the unstable, unbalanced, crazy one. And he capitalizes on that legally as well as with parental alienation, which is the last thing that you want to happen. So right now, it is not about your marriage. It's about you. And what do you need to do to start taking care of you so that you get healthy? One would be attend this webinar. Second would be to join our support group of Conquer, which is not open right now, but will be open after the webinar. Conquer is an educational and support group for Christian women in destructive marriages where you get that kind of support, not to blab about how awful your husband is. Everybody in that group has awful husbands, or they wouldn't have joined that group. Your job is to do the work that you need to do to get healthy and strong, to know what your next right step is. And you can't discern that when you're all spun up in a muddle. And so it's very important for you now to let go of him and what he's doing wrong and how he's driving you crazy, and understand he's driving you crazy. And what do you need to do to start seeing straight and calm yourself down so that you can make wise, good decisions for yourself, for your children, and not be caught in the reactive mode and becoming abusive yourself.
So good.
So good.
My husband is extremely focused on having a better marriage, this gal says, but he is not focused on doing his work. How can I help him see that wrong mindset?
Well, I think this is really a helpful thing. I have a meeting at 1, so I'm going to have to close down this pretty soon. But I think the first thing is to say, what does a better marriage look like for you? And he'd say, well, it means we have sex 3 times a week. It makes the house clean. You're nice to me all the time, whatever it is, he says. And then I think you can say to him, are you interested in what a better marriage would be for me? Right? Because oftentimes he's only thinking of his needs. And if you say, I need you to help me more around the house. I need you to quit criticizing me. I need you to give me access to the financial records so that I can see where we're at, because it makes me anxious that I have no say or no. Is he willing to have a better marriage for both of you, or is it just about him? I need my cell phone to take better pictures. Are you not going to take better pictures? Okay, I'm going to get rid of you and find someone else. Right? And so this is a relationship. Then it has to go both ways. What makes it better for you, and what makes it better for me? And does that matter to you?
Beautifully said. Mm-hmm. Again, those curious questions, and having the courage and establishing safety to have these curious questions. That's part of our work to do, isn't it, Leslie?
It absolutely is. And I see so many questions in the feed that I would love to address. And when they reply, God hates divorce, and are convinced you're in sin, Tanya, you're not going to change his mind. The mind you have to work on is your own. You're not responsible for his thinking or his spiritual life. You're responsible for yours. And so I would just encourage you, if this is resonating with you, please sign up, join the webinar. It's next Wednesday. It'll be an hour long of teaching. So I'll go into all of this, what we're talking about, in much more detail. You can take notes. Then I'll be live for Q&A afterwards. I'll answer your questions in detail. So we'll be able to really have that conversation. And if you don't show up live, you're going to miss all that. And so I would just really encourage you right now to put a big red circle around 12 o'clock noon next Wednesday or 7:30 p.m. And if you have to watch it on your phone in the car so that you have some privacy, then do it. Do it. Because this is life changing for you. This is a moment. You're here for a reason. God's brought you here for a reason. And we want to help you get sane, safe, and strong. And God wants that for you too, so that you're not just reacting and doing things that will cost you in the long run, things that you don't want to have to pay those consequences. And then you'll be much stronger and wiser, and you'll have a huge support group of other women who know what your life is like to talk about this with and to grow with, so that you become a woman that you're proud of. Even if your marriage doesn't make it, you will be proud of yourself in the way that you handled it. And that's our goal. And so please sign up for the webinar. I know, Diana, you have a hard stop at 1. I have a hard stop at 1. So we're going to have to go. But thank you so much for being a part of this. We will be back on Wednesday to talk about isolation. I believe that's the topic. And we'll see you at the same time here Wednesday on our public Facebook page. All right. Share this with a friend if you think it's helpful. Take care.
Can I say the winner's name?
Oh, yes, we have a winner.
We have a winner. So I want to say her name so she makes sure that she knows she's the winner. Her name is Michelle McCowan Lanham. Please email martha@leslievernick.com for your prize. Thanks for being here with us live.
Yes, we're giving prizes out for the person who's commenting and interacting. We're drawing names, and you get either a Starbucks gift card, you get an Amazon gift card, or you get one of my books. Whichever you choose, you get to choose. But you have to email martha@leslievernick.com and say, I'm the winner of today's Facebook Live. Okay? God bless. See you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.